Welcome to the deep dive. You sent over a really fascinating piece this week.
I did. It's a chapter called Presentation from Robert Little's book, Reimagining Preaching and Leading Worship.
Now, I know what some listeners might be thinking. Preaching? What's that got to do with me? But honestly, stick with us here.
Yeah, because the principles Little talks about, they're just, well, pure gold for anyone who needs to communicate effectively. Doesn't matter if it's a team meeting, a sales pitch.
Or even just explaining something complicated to a friend, right?
Exactly. So many of us want to, grasp how to make our message actually connect and be remembered, but without wading through tons of academic stuff.
And that's what we're doing today, sort of a shortcut to the core ideas from this chapter.
Precisely. We've spent time digging into it, and our mission really is to pull out those key strategies. How do you genuinely engage people? How do you make your message stick?
Okay, let's jump right in then. Little starts with something that really made me think differently about presenting.
Which bit was that?
The idea that even if you're the only one speaking like in a sermon or, a keynote, it's never truly a monologue.
That's such a crucial point. It's not just broadcasting information at people.
Right. Your audience, they're not just empty vessels waiting to be filled.
No, they come with everything, don't they? Their own feelings, ideas, background knowledge, what they expect to hear. Even their own agendas sometimes.
So you can't just ignore all that.
Mm-hmm.
Little says you need to actively engage their imaginations.
Their emotions, get them thinking, maybe even prompt them towards some kind of action or decision. It's about involvement.
So it's more than just, here's the information. It's about creating an experience almost.
Absolutely. You need to consider what's going on inside their heads. What will actually grab their attention? What resonates emotionally for them?
That leads nicely into the different delivery methods. Little discusses and how they impact that engagement. First up, reading from a full script.
Ah, yes, the perceived safety net.
Exactly. Seems safe, right? You cover all your points, maybe fewer ums and ahs.
And look, if the script is written really well, like actual spoken English, not formal written text, and delivered naturally, it can work. It ensures coherence.
The big plus being you don't panic about forgetting something crucial.
True. But we've all sat through presentations where someone is just reading, and it can sound so stiff.
Oh, definitely. Wooden. Boring, even. There's that disconnect.
Little even tells that story, maybe apocryphal, about the politician reading stage directions like, pause for applause.
Yeah. Shows the danger, doesn't it? When the delivery isn't natural.
And another point he makes, which I thought was really sharp, is that a purely read script often lacks the kind of repetition and emphasis that helps people actually remember things.
Like how newsreaders often circle back to the main headlines.
Exactly. They reinforce the key takeaways. Just delivering information once, however perfectly written, often isn't enough for it to really sink in.
Okay, so method 2, using headings and notes. This feels more conversational.
It generally is, yeah. It encourages you to be more present, allows for a bit more natural flow.
And Little suggests those little moments where you might pause, rephrase, maybe even stumble slightly. They can actually make you seem more human.
They can inject a bit of personality, maybe even humor. It builds connection. And practically fewer bits of paper to manage.
But the potential downside, if your notes aren't clear to you.
Oh, absolutely. You risk rambling or sounding, well, incoherent. And if you go off on a tangent...
There's no safety net script to bring you back easily.
Right. You need a good mental map or very clear notes to navigate back smoothly.
Then there's the third way, extempore, speaking with no notes at all. Little sounds pretty skeptical about this one.
He does, doesn't he? He mentions the potential upsides, maybe a feeling of magnetic connection, more freedom for the speaker.
A sense of divine inspiration, perhaps?
Maybe. But he heavily emphasizes the downsides for, let's be honest, most people.
And those downsides sound quite familiar. Rambling.
Repeating the same favorite points over and over.
The audience thinking you haven't bothered to prepare properly.
Or that you're not taking it seriously. And that inspiration. Little suggests it might just be, well, mental drift.
Ouch. So unless you're one of those rare, incredibly gifted people who've researched so deeply, they basically have it memorized.
His very strong recommendation is, don't try this at home. Or anywhere, really.
Okay, so preparation, structure, but with a natural conversational delivery seems key. Which brings us to Professor Morabian's research. This is fascinating stuff.
It really is. The idea that only 7% of meaning comes from the actual words.
Just 7%.
Yeah.
And 38% from paralinguistics, tone, pace, how you sound.
And the biggest chunk, 55%, from facial expression and body language.
It's kind of mind-blowing, isn't it, if the words themselves are such a small part?
It really forces a rethink, doesn't it? What does that mean for how we communicate? Well, anything.
Do we spend too much time polishing the words and not enough on everything else?
It certainly challenges the idea that just having the right information is enough. Your energy, your tone, your expressions, they carry so much weight in how the message is actually received and felt.
Think about someone who really persuaded you. Was it just their logical points?
Or was it also their confidence, their conviction, the way they looked you in the eye? Probably a mix, but likely heavy on the nonverbals.
Now, building on that connection beyond words, Little brings in Professor Basil Bernstein and his ideas about restricted and elaborated code. Can you unpack those?
Sure. So Bernstein noticed that groups with lots of shared understanding, like close colleagues maybe, or a family, use restricted code.
Like shorthand, inside jokes.
Exactly. You don't need to spell everything out because there's so much shared context. Fewer words, more meaning conveyed between the lines.
Okay, makes sense. Efficient.
But when those same people talk to outsiders, they switch to elaborated code.
More formal, more detailed explanations.
Right. Because you can't assume that shared background. You have to explicitly state things, define terms, connect the dots for them.
Seems logical. You want to be clear.
Here's the twist, though. Bernstein argued that restricted code, that insider language, can actually be more persuasive.
Wait, really? Even if the audience doesn't share all that background? That seems counterintuitive.
It does. His thinking was that elaborated code, while clear, can sometimes feel distant, maybe even patronizing, like you're being lectured.
Ah, okay. Like being over-explained to.
Whereas restricted code, even if not fully understood consciously, can create this feeling of being in the know, a sense of connection, of shared identity. It draws people in.
So for us communicating, are we sometimes using that formal, elaborated code when we explain something we know well?
And inadvertently putting people off, making it sound boring or like we're talking down to them.
Instead of finding ways to create that sense of shared journey, even with complex topics. Something to think about.
Definitely. Are you inviting people in or keeping them at arm's length with your language?
Now, shifting gears slightly, Little brings in practical advice from presentation coach Patricia Fripp. Real actionable stuff here, and her first point is huge. Preparation.
Non-negotiable, according to Fur. It starts with a framework, an outline. That structure isn't just for you.
It's crucial for the audience, too, right?
Right.
So they can follow along and remember.
Absolutely. And she suggests scripting and really rehearsing your opening and closing. Nail those key moments.
But maybe not read the whole thing word for word in the middle.
Right. Have those start and end points solid, but allow for more natural delivery in the main body, perhaps working from that outline or detailed notes.
And I like the tip about writing out your introduction if someone else is introducing you, especially to a new audience.
Yes. Ensures accuracy and lets you subtly establish your credibility from the get-go.
Which flows right into her next big point. Rehearsal. The ultimate key, she calls it.
And not just thinking it through in your head, she means practicing out loud.
Paying attention to your voice tone, pace, emphasis, finding the passion.
Yes. Even if you do have a full script for backup, practice delivering it spontaneously, looking up, making that connection.
What about the notes? She had a clever tip for glasses wearers.
Ah, yes. The reflection can kind of mask quick glances down, helping maintain that feeling of eye contact.
But the bigger point is being personal matters more than being perfect, isn't it?
Totally. Connection over robotic perfection every time.
And practice with a clock. Manage your time. Vary your pace. Avoid that dreaded monotone.
And please silence your phone. Seems obvious, but...
Still happens. But she goes further. Record yourself, audio and video.
Now, I know that feels awkward for many people.
Ugh, yes. Hearing your own voice back. Seeing your weird mannerisms.
But it's so valuable. You catch the filler words, the ums, the uhs, the likes. You see the distracting fidgeting.
Things you might not even be aware you're doing.
And Fripp is blunt. The audience will notice, even subconsciously. It distracts from your message. Practice helps you iron those out.
And get feedback. Ask trusted people.
Yeah.
Was it clear? Did it flow? Was it engaging?
Use that feedback. Rehearse, refine, repeat. The payoff is that confidence and connection when you actually deliver.
Okay, let's talk about starting strong. They had the first impression. Little highlights the first 30 seconds as absolutely crucial.
It's everything, isn't it? Your invitation, your roadmap, your opening hook.
And the key shift he recommends immediately. Make it about you, the listener, not I, the speaker.
Yes. Instead of, I'm going to talk about, Yeah, try in the next few minutes. You'll discover, or you'll learn how. It pulls people in right away.
The book gives a whole bunch of techniques for that opening hook. Storytelling is a big one.
Yeah, personal story overcoming something, a moment of insight. It creates instant human connection. You've talked about stories before, they're so powerful.
Humor, too, if used carefully.
Definitely. Keep it relevant, maybe self-deprecating, and always be mindful of your audience. Real-life observational humor often works best.
What about starting with a startling statistic or a little-known fact?
Great way to spark curiosity or surprise. That example. Would it amaze you to know 90% of preachers miss captivating their audience in the first minute?
That grabs you, right?
It does. Or a powerful quote.
Yes, from someone relevant, or just asking a direct question to the audience.
How often have you struggled with? Gets them thinking immediately. Rhetorical questions work too. Or framing it as the 3 questions I get asked most often, and then focusing on one.
Making a comparison to something topical, connecting to headlines.
All good ways to establish immediate relevance.
Or making a bold claim or a big promise, though you better deliver.
Huh, yes. Promise big, deliver bigger. Or even just a sincere compliment to the audience.
The point is, that opening is the threshold. Nail it, and people are with you.
Flub it, and you're fighting an uphill battle.
So once you've got them hooked, how do you maintain that connection? Little talks about building an extraordinary relationship.
It's about connecting on 2 levels. Intellectually and emotionally.
Logic and feeling.
Exactly. The intellectual part comes from your content, your reasoning, the evidence you provide, statistics, maybe Bible passages in his context.
But the emotional connection, that's the motivator.
That's what really drives action and makes things memorable. And again, the main tool here is that consistent you-focused language.
Keep the spotlight on the audience, their needs, their world, not constantly talking about me or I.
Unless it's a brief story to illustrate a point for them, you're the guide, the bridge to the information, not the star of the show.
Using phrases like, what does this mean for you? Or imagine how your life could change if.
Or think about a time you felt. It constantly brings it back to their experience.
In a world absolutely saturated with messages, making your stick is tough.
Thousands of messages a day competing for attention. Specificity and relatability are vital. Vague platitudes just get lost.
So focus on relevance. How does this touch their lives, their problems?
Stir their emotions, make them feel something. Joy, concern, hope, curiosity. Emotion equals memory.
And offer novelty, a fresh angle, a surprising insight. Cut through the noise.
Ultimately, that power comes from connecting deeply, personally, using that you focus.
And structure helps with sticking power too, doesn't it? A clear path.
Definitely. Know what you want people to think, feel, or do after each section. A logical sequence makes it way easier to remember and even share later.
Keep them engaged with questions, maybe quick exercises, real examples.
Now, little brings up the rule of 3. I love this one.
Me too. Things in threes just sound right somehow. More memorable.
Think of slogans, jokes, stories. Veni, vidi, vici. It just works. Little notes its significance in Christian tradition too. Wholeness, completeness.
It offers brevity, rhythm, a neat pattern. Easy for the brain to grab onto.
So practically, group adjectives in 3s for emphasis. It was insightful, practical, and inspiring.
And distill your core message down. No more than 3 main points. Hammer those home.
Absolutely. Keep it focused.
He also talks about stories being a goldmine. Where do we find them?
Everywhere. Pay attention to everyday life, conversations you overhear, your own experiences.
And if you tell someone else's story.
Make the ordinary person the hero. It adds credibility and relatability. Just listen actively. Stories are abundant.
And always know your audience.
What makes them tick? What are their challenges, opportunities? Tailor everything to them.
Clarity and conciseness are key too. Cut the jargon.
Use simpler words where possible. Anglo-Saxon over Latinate, often. Get to the point. Specificity builds credibility.
Better words, better results. So it boils down to understanding, engaging, and delivering effectively.
Pretty much. But he adds a couple of other interesting points at the end. Appearance, for instance.
Right. His advice was slightly counterintuitive. Conservative dress for radical ideas in traditional settings.
Yeah, so the clothes don't become a barrier. And maybe more eye-catching attire for more standard messages in less traditional settings to help you stand out.
It's about considering the context and the message.
And he touches on becoming slightly larger than life to be memorable. Investing in a distinct look, maybe.
Like the example of women preachers historically using distinctive hats. A visual anchor.
It's a fine line, isn't it, between being memorable in service of the message and just being ego-driven.
Exactly. You want them to remember the message ultimately. But being memorable helps the message get remembered. Patricia Fripp's quote, "There's no point going anywhere if people don't remember you were there."
It's a balance. Standing out versus blending in. In communication, standing out usually helps.
So, wrapping this deep dive up, we've covered a lot of ground on making presentations effective.
The big takeaways really are intertwined. Know your audience deeply.
Engage them emotionally and intellectually right from that crucial opening.
Structure your message logically so it sticks.
Put in the hard yards with rehearsal.
And keep that focus firmly on you, the listener.
And while the source material was about preaching, these principles are just universal, aren't they?
Absolutely. Team meetings, pitches, teaching, explaining anything important, it all applies. It's about human connection through communication.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening to ponder.
Go on.
Which one technique we discussed today really jumped out at you? Which one could you try maybe even tomorrow in your next conversation or presentation?
And how might focusing not just on what you say, but how you say it, and really considering your audience's perspective, how might that change your impact?
And thinking about that balance, being a memorable messenger while ensuring the message itself is what truly resonates. Where's that sweet spot for you?
Definitely something worth reflecting on.